Hello, everybody. Welcome to Open the Daw Part 4. It's the last in this series, and we have a very sick guest with us. Moisinn, how are you feeling?
Yeah, a little bit flued up, but it's still good to be here, of course.
Oh, bless your cotton socks. Thank you for being a trooper and showing up. Could you just check, Moisinn, that it's live on YouTube, Facebook and Twitch? Because when I started the broadcast, it said that YouTube wasn't live, but I think it is live now. So hi to everybody. We've got a lot to cover tonight. We hope you're well. Hi to Jessica, Sandy, and everyone joining in. Hopefully you can all hear and see us fine. And we will try to be gentle on Moisinn tonight because he is a trooper for doing this. Tonight we're going to cover... We've had a lot of questions about sidechaining and mastering and stereo sides and all this stuff. So because this is the last one, we thought we'd start by, because we've started off with creating tracks, adding parts. I think what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a simple way to sidechain. Then I'm going to show you how I actually like to sidechain. We'll go over that one more time because I think a lot of people really want us to do that. And then we'll start on the mastering techniques. Now I outsource my mastering, as I said, but I still know how to do it roughly. So I will show you how you can master your own track, hopefully. And Moisinn will get into, I think, more maybe the stereo sides of things. We can get deeper into that as we get more deeper down the rabbit hole. So, as usual, we will do the first hour and a half of show and tell. And then the second half hour will be all your questions answered. And if you sign up to the link, which I will be posting and periodically pinning to the message boards, you will get a trimmed down version of this 2 hour. And lastly, let's just get on with it. Okay, so I'm going to present my screen. Good evening, everybody. Yeah. We know there's crackling going on, Neil, and we did explain last week that if anyone can figure out why it doesn't do it on Firefox, but it does it on... it's been a nightmare, actually. We've probably spent, Moisinn, would you say 30 hours trying to solve this problem?
Yeah, 30 hours and a full SAS team of people who just know their stuff about technology. And
even Dean Sense, who does this for a living, fixes stream problems, has never come across this problem. Basically, we're getting crackling, but if you use Firefox in a different browser, we don't get the crackling. Unfortunately, Firefox is very unstable, and when we were testing the Firefox stuff out, it just kept crashing constantly. I couldn't show you the third-party plugin, so if I was showing you something on Ableton and then I pulled up Serum, you wouldn't be able to see Serum. So we figure better the devil you know, and we'll do the crackling. And also it's free, so deal with it. Okay, moving on. Present. I'm just playing. Or am I? Okay, present. Let's get straight into it. And Moisinn is going to be checking out the chat.
Yeah, shout out to James Allen saying, Trooper Moisinn, thank you. I feel the love.
He is.
So if I lean away from the mic and I cough, I'm trying to not...
I feel like I'm getting sick just listening to you. Like I'm getting that empathy and I feel almost a bit stuffy here. Okay, so I would suggest you lovely people is to expand your screens and use the exit full screen, and then you can see everything in large format. What I wanted to do is just play you a track that I'm working on that is pretty near ready, I would say, for mastering. And this is the point where I would export the stems and send them. Well, no, this is a point where I'd give myself a break and give myself a week away from it. And then if I like it in a week, I'd export the stems, send it off to Compound Audio and have them master it. But we're going to do that ourselves today. So hopefully this isn't too loud, and I'll play a little bit from the top. It may be a wee tad distorted because I am in the process of... So let me just turn that limiter down a little bit before we start, just in case, and then we'll start from the beginning. Now, some parts of this have been mastered and some haven't. I'll explain later, you'll see. For now, let's just start at the top. Computer's going to sleep. Oh, my drums are soloed. So, well, I want to talk a little bit about the mastering process, because this is something I really don't like to do myself, ever. And...
I do avoid it as well, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I know. I just want to make sure everything's on. Okay. There we go. All right. And but you know, it's important you know this stuff. So sure when this will get released, but definitely this year.
Soon, hopefully.
Back to the old school. Back to the old school. Going back to the old school. Back to the old school. Back to the old school. Back to the old school.
Back to the old school, guys.
Back to the old school. Back to the old school.
Okay, so now you've had a little vibe of what that is. It will help you understand what we're sidechaining. So right now I've done some light mastering on a few bits. Well, the basses, the drums, that's it. And I've done some sidechaining to the basses and the drums, which is why everything's popping nice. So let's get into sidechaining, because this seems to be something that really confuses everyone, and it's actually not that difficult. But it does take a few goes for the penny to drop. It confused me for years. I don't know why. So here's a section. Which section is this with the drums? There we go. If you listen to the bass, you can hear there's volume being ducked on it, right? So let me show you how to do this in a simple way, and break it down super simply for you guys. And then we can get to a more complex sidechaining. The reason I like the more complicated way to sidechain is because I feel I can get more detailed and do really small sidechaining with a small... I like to be able to draw in the sidechain really tightly so I can see it. Whereas the other way I feel is a little bit, I don't know, it's hard to see. Okay, I'm going to close the pre-master group, forget about that track for a second. And what I've done is I've put a serum here with just a bass, simply a sine wave, just doing this, because we're going to sidechain this. I thought it'd be easier just to keep it real simple. I've also put a kick here and a snare. Okay, so we're now going to go ahead and sidechain that. If there's any questions in the chat whilst I'm doing this that are pertaining to this, Josh, let me know if you can, hun.
No
so
problem.
a simple way to do this, for those of you who are more beginners or just want the simple route, is you go into your serum, and we're going to get in our audio effects, we're going to get a compressor. So I'm going to go into dynamics here. I'm going to drop a compressor. There's already one on there. Never mind. Now we have two. Let's get rid of that one. That's because I have my channels auto set up with everything. I'm going to put this on this view so we can see what's going on here. And I'm going to leave this ratio around 4. And all I'm going to do is open this up here, and we're going to select what we want to duck the volume. So in this case, we want the kick to do it, or the ghost kick, or whatever you want to call it. I've called this a kick, so I know what to look for. And I'm going to open this here where it says sidechain, and then I'm going to go, it's saying, where do you want the audio from? So right now it says no input. And I'm going to go and I'm going to look for a kick, which is down here, right? So I'm going to select a kick. So now it's the kick is going to be ducking the volume on the bass, and we've told it that. You're going to pull the threshold down, and I'm just going to mute the snare for a second. And I want the attack to be quick. The attack is how long is it going to take before this happens, right? So we want it to happen really quickly. So I'll pull the attack down. But the best way to explain is, because a lot of people are like, well, how do you know how much attack and how do you know how much release? The best way, because there is no set way, every snare, every kick is different, is to literally just listen to it and mess around with the parameters. Wouldn't you agree, Josh?
Yep, definitely. Best way. You trust your ears.
Unless they're fried like mine. So if we listen to the bass, I don't know if you guys can hear that. I'm going to put the bass up an octave just in case people can't hear it, because I've noticed on sub, sometimes on StreamYard, it's hard to hear the sub, so hopefully you guys can hear that better. So if we go back here and you look at what I'm doing, the threshold is pulled excessively all the way down just to make a point. So you can, and that's basically it. You've just sidechained it. Now that is not in the way anymore. Obviously this is too much, but if you put the kick in now, doesn't sound too much. But this would be to taste, right? So you would do it to taste and go, okay, that's too much, or that's probably enough. Listen to the difference when I change the attack and when I change the release, how it responds. So it's taking a lot longer for it to happen. So we really want that to be quick. Again, it's sort of softer. It's not hard, and we want that to happen. So I'm going to keep the release quite short as well. And you can mess around with the ratio. What ratio do you like? Around 3 or 4?
Yeah, usually about 3 to 1.
So let's just say that's probably good for my kick right there, right? And what I'm going to do is another one for my snare. Okay, so we'll do the same thing again for the snare. I could have kept that other compressor after all. Oh, threw it away like a broken lover. Here we go. I'll put this back. So now we're going to repeat the same process with the snare. So we're going to open this up. Sidechain. Input is going to be from a snare, because that's what I've named this. I should have put ghost snare, but because I've got other channels with ghost snare on there, I don't want to confuse everybody. And we're going to do the same here, mess around and listen. I'm going to actually turn off the other compressor and solo the bass just so I can hear clearly what's going on. So see, now the snare is doing its best. Sounds kind of good to me. And now if we listen to this together, we can then tune it and make any changes we want. And what I'm going to do is group these two compressors together. Sorry, the kick's not on. And then we can hopefully hear the difference. You've got to understand these things are subtle. It's not like, I mean, it can be more than subtle, but I find when I first started listening to compressors and side chaining, I was like, I don't really hear the difference. It's not until you really start to listen for it and train your ears that you start to hear the difference. Okay, so that's with it on. Try and listen to it off and on and close your eyes, and maybe you'll be able to hear the difference better that way than if you watch it visually, because that's going to tell your brain to listen. Can you hear the difference?
Okay.
Right? And let's make them extreme so you can really...
Sometimes you want this, don't you? Sometimes you want this like style.
As an effect. You may say, I love that as an effect. If you listen to Daft Punk or any filtered house stuff, I mean, that is what they're doing. They are doing the ducking all the way. So if this was a stab sound, it would be, you may want this sound and then change it to like an acid sort of house type sound. Otherwise, it's just a wall of sound. So that is a very, very simple way of doing this. And you can then put it in a rack if you wanted to, and you could cut the frequencies. And there's all kinds of different ways you can do this. This is just the most basic sidechain to show you. Any questions in the chat about this, or is everyone cool with this? Yeah.
A couple of things. So there was so Tequila Dave said, when working with bass lines, are headphones enough, or do you really need studio speakers or bass bins for that bodily feel? The only reason why I'm reading this out, I feel like it's quite relevant to what we're doing now, and I think.
And also, he's got the name Tequila Dave.
And yeah, he's got the name Tequila
Dave. Great name.
So.
I think I'll tell you now, I don't have speakers. I mean, I have them, but I don't use them. I literally live in these puppies, and that's it. And initially this was because of the sound situation with neighbors, and I want to be able to make music at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. But these headphones are so sensitive, and my mastering guy, Dean, recommended these to me. So did Exile. And they said that it would basically change my life. And I promised myself that I would get them if I advanced my sound design to a certain point. I would reward myself by spending, because they're like nearly £1,000. They're expensive. But no, I've never needed speakers after this. These are the best. But they're expensive. So, this is something you don't buy straight away. You buy as a reward if you've got to a point where you're like, look, I want to be able to put my own tracks out and do this. But no, you don't need
great budget headphones, DT 770s, Bayer Dynamic. They're like sub 150 quid, and they've done me for years.
Yeah, I mean, there's the headphones I use for DJing. That's different to these. So your DJ headphones will be very different from the headphones you use for production. Heads up. So, okay. So any other side chaining questions before I get into more complex side chaining?
Nope, no questions.
Nope. Okay, so... See how it's making that bass pump? So, if you wanted to do some cool stuff to that bass and put some LFOs or just make it modulate, there's so much you could do just from creating a sine wave. And often I find if you're stuck with what bass line to make, the first thing you do is just pop in a simple sine wave like that, just a straight line, and then spend the time modulating it and doing things to it. I mean, you could just make a great bass line just from doing that, and then the rest will come. So if you're stuck, that's another cool way of doing it. Okay, let's close this off. See, now it's just, there's no life to it, there's no movement. It's crazy, isn't it, how much difference that makes? Okay, now we're going to go into the way I like to sidechain. I mean, that's perfectly adequate. I just feel like for me, it's not detailed enough, but maybe because I'm more visual and I like to see stuff. So the other way, I like to see and draw in the sidechain. I'll never forget when I was watching Artifacts doing one of his live ones. He's so good at this. He was talking about sidechaining and how to use the tiniest little sliver of a kick just to let that kick through the beginning of that kick. And it's kind of the same thing. I want to be able to control that more. Okay, so on our bass, I'm just going to name this bass, or that'll drive me crazy. I'm going to get a shaper box, which is what I use. I think you use this as well. Don't
Yeah,
you?
pick up the shaper box. It's one of
Pick up the shaper box.
Yeah, literally. I was like, I'm so sorry. I've got like flu brain, but yeah, I bought it and that's it. I've never gone back to compressors. It's just this.
Yep. Once you go shaper, you never go back. Right. Okay. So here we go. So, and in fact, yeah, we're going to go to volume, and I'm going to turn the MIDI trigger on, and I'm going to create 3 points here. Ready. Oh. And I'm just going to pull this down. Tell me if I've gone upside down on this, Josh. Sometimes I get this. It's so funny. I'll get this the wrong.
You're fine. I do it all the time.
I'll get it the wrong way round, and I'll do the point the other way up. But anyway, here you go. So I'm just getting this ready in preparation. I don't think there's anything else on here I could do right now, and that's it. That'll just make my life easier later on. So what we want to do is we want to have MIDI send the signal, not the actual snare. I mean, this is just a different way of doing it, okay? So we need to create some MIDI for this kick. And the way I like to do this is I'm going to consolidate this kick. This is a super quick way. And then I'm going to convert drums to MIDI track. And now I've got these drums here. And all I need is the kick. So I'm going to get rid of everything that isn't a kick on here, because Ableton is looking and going, oh, I think there's this, this, and this, and all we want is the kick. So if you now look at this and I open this up, you'll see that it's placed MIDI points exactly where the kicks are. So it's a super quick way of doing things. And I'm now going to get rid of this one because we have our MIDI, and I'm going to call this a kick. And And we can do the same with the snare as well, the same process. So let's just get that ready so that it's ready to go. Consolidate. So I'm going really slowly because this section is this is the beginner's sort of vibe, but also we're doing a little bit more advanced. And then I'm going to right click, convert drums to new MIDI track. And the other thing to remember, make sure that you... Oh, that's all right, just one second. Make sure when you've converted that you take all the instruments off the channel, because you want to see these dots on the right-hand side here. They need to show up. And if they're not showing up, it's because you've got stuff on your channel. So it's just a MIDI signal you're looking for. That's it. Okay. So let's go here and get rid of any excess stuff that it's decided to put in. We don't need the kick, we just need the snare. There we go. And you'll see that it has copied our beautiful snare pattern exactly. So I'm going to get rid of a snare. So now we have MIDI from both the kick and the snare ready to go. And I'm going to make sure I take everything off this channel as well. Just get rid of it. So now we've got those dots on the right hand side as well. Now we need to tell that MIDI where to go. In a nice way. So we want to say
you will go here.
You will go here and you will go here. So let's focus on our kick first. And we want to put, it's saying that there's no output. So where are we sending this MIDI signal to? Well, obviously we want to send it to bass. So I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom. Actually, let me just name this something easier so I can see it, because I'm blind as a bat. We want to send this to bass. Am I blind?
I think I actually need my glasses.
Oh my God.
I know.
Do it. Get them. Oh, here it is, right at the bottom. Very, very bottom. Somewhere. Hold on. That's weird that I can't see it. I know I'm going blind.
Ah, I see it there at the bottom.
There it is. God damn it. This is what happens when you're 54. And you've got your glasses
What's my excuse?
What's your, I was going to say. Open the door where people come to die. Okay, so we've told it where to go, which is that, and which is the bass, okay? Now we need to tell it what plugin to affect. So if we look here, it will be the last one in your chain, which is Shaper Box. So now we've told this MIDI from our kick that we want it to go to the bass channel, and it needs to affect that with its MIDI signal, and that we want it to affect the Shaper Box. So hopefully that will work. So let's see. I'm going to solo the bass, bring the Shaper Box back up again. And you can hear it ducking. Now sometimes there'll be a little pop that will be annoying, and one of the things you can do is with the LFO smoothing, you can smooth this out a bit. There you go, that's less of a pop. See, can you hear that pop? And then you can just decide how fine a point do you want to have of your side chaining. Extreme. Or just a little bit. So let's put our kick in. Oh, got rid of the kick, didn't I? Of course, I'm an idiot. Hold on. But at least you can hear the difference. Right, so now you can draw it in and it's much more fine. I prefer this process because, to me, I have much more control over it this way. Let me just put that on there. And then I would repeat the same for the snare. The other thing you can do as well is if you can change, you can just listen to the low end of the frequencies here and change the band so you can hear how much it's affecting the bottom end. I don't really do that much. Do you, though? When do you use that?
Yeah, so I'll probably use that when, let's say I've got a bass that's like really high and it's got loads of high information, like a Reese. And like I can't quite tell when the sidechain's actually happening. Just sort of slide that arrow along the top, and it just makes it so you can solo the low end and you can really dial in exactly when your release times are.
Let me show you. You solo it. So you can just hear the frequencies that way. It's pretty useful. Okay, so now you can see how you can sidechain using this. So if we were going to do the same for the snare, it would be exactly the same process. Do I need to go through that again, or do you think I don't need to? But I would do another shaper box, exactly the same. Pop it on here. Get rid of this one. And repeat the same process again with the snare. And there you've got your side chaining. You just listen to the bass group on its own. You don't need to hear the kick or snare. You don't need to. And it's just pumping the way you want it to pump. And that's basically it. It's exactly the same process. Volume.
I think the beauty of this way is that wherever you put that MIDI trigger, it's just going to like duck whatever it's on, wherever you put it. So it's quite flexible compared to the compressor.
Yeah. So I'm going to get rid of all this stuff now. We've gone through this. Hopefully that makes sense for everybody, and that's an easy way to sidechain as well as a more complicated way to sidechain. It's not really that complicated once you get used to it. It's like MIDI on, draw 3 points and then just dial it in. I mean, that's really it. The hardest part is just making sure that you copy your drum pattern. So I leave the sidechaining to the very end, because what I don't want to do is work really hard on everything and then have to change it all. So I don't bounce that track to MIDI until I'm really finished with all my fills, with everything. And of course you can automate the sidechain, so maybe you don't want the little fills to be sidechained, so you can just automate that and bring the device on and off, and that's one way to sidechain. Any questions about sidechaining before we start to move on?
Yes, there was. James Allen asked, would you duck lead synths or any other mid-range elements?
I mean, it depends what you want to duck. If it's a filtered house tune, I would probably want to duck everything so it pumps with it. You know what I mean? What about you?
Yeah, if like you get to the end of the mix and you realise that, oh, my lead is overpowering my snare, then you'd probably duck the snare like really quickly. It depends if it's a lead that's consistent, like a wall of sound. Remember when I just played you the sine wave and it was just duh, and it was just straight. So if everything's got this nice pumping vibe to it, and then you put a synth lead in, you probably would want to include that, because, you want everything to have that pump. Do you remember those Jamie Magic tracks? Space Invader and all that. It's all about side chaining. So, he'd side chained everything. Da, 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 da. Do you know the track? And it's all pumping through. So, yeah, I mean, it's really up to you. But if that side chaining is a major feature of your track, and it's not just about letting the kick and snare pump through, definitely, if you want everything to punch through, the kick and snare to punch through everything, and you've got consistent snares on consistent synths going all the way through, then yes, I probably would. Anything else before we move on? Apologies, just monitoring the chat.
Okay, so let's move on to a little bit of the mastering situation, because, all right, I think we covered, I'm trying to remember what we've covered last week and what we've done. I'm pretty sure we did arrangement, but if there's something you guys want to know that we haven't covered, we'll try and get to it today, but do drop a question so that Josh can see her. So, okay, so First things first, what I've done is, if you remember, and I think it was in the first session of Open the Daw, on the pre-master, we've put a limiter. On every group or bus, we've put a limiter. And sometimes in the chain, you may need to tame those peaks a bit. So let's say you've got a bass and you've done some EQing, and then you may need to put another limiter before you go through and do some more stuff to it. So, you've got that. If you are sending out your stems, because a lot of people say, well, when do I take the limiters off and how do I leave them off and blah, 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 blah. Rule of thumb, if you are sending off stems for someone else to export, you would leave the limiter on the buses and any chains, but you would take it off the pre-master. Okay, so that's the important thing to do. If you're mastering your own track, then you go through this process, which we're about to show you now a bit. Here we go. So on the master, I have now added a utility and a limiter and the megascope. I can't say Zillisos. It's such a... You know, for those of you who
Azilius.
it's just... Why have they called it that? You know, I just don't understand. All right, I'm going to play some... So this is keeping between the two lines, and you want to have everything stay between there. Josh, do you want to explain basically these two lines and the concept of the oscilloscope? Because you're much better explaining that to me. I just get...
Sure. So the top two lines are like the more white ones. They're your 0 dB line. Anything that's above that is technically over 0 dB, which shouldn't be possible. But when you render, so when you render Ableton or when you render in FL or Cubase, whatever you use, it always sort of cuts it off at 0 dB. So if you're monitoring this and making sure that none of your sounds are going above that 0 dB, then it's the safe bet.
Yeah, that's well put. I can never explain it that well, thank you. And when you put this in, you just set it up and use it, but I don't know if you guys use it, but it's just a good monitoring tool. Okay, so I have my fab filter, and the first thing, my limiter, sorry, fab limiter, and the first thing I'm going to do is push this to +7. The reason I'm doing this is it's a good starting point, because it tends to be a medium. So I don't know what you start at, Josh, but for me, it's like you can either push harder into the limiter, because remember, we're now mastering this ourselves. Let's pretend that I have a gig tonight and I want to play this out and test it. Okay, so I'm going to master this myself before I send it to Dean to warrant the money I'm going to spend mastering. So this could be what I do. So I'm going to push my mix into the limiter. So I'm going to go up to +7, because this is a good medium starting point. And you can always take it down, and you can always push even harder if you want to. Okay, so that's the first thing I'm going to do. And now this is where it gets a little tricky, so I'm going to try and explain it as simply as I can. It seems to me that the mastering process, and it's different for everybody and how everyone else does it, oh, my hands are cold, is that you're just constantly EQing, pulling sounds up, pulling sounds down, creating frequencies, creating spaces where things should live. So you're making things spatially better and creating the right room for each of those frequencies to hang out in. And it's taken me years to learn how to do this, mainly because I was just terrified of learning it. I think that's what stopped me. Once I got into this, it's actually quite fascinating, and it's not too tricky. I mean, if I can do this, anyone can do this. Honestly, I'll tell you that. And I don't mean, I'm not trying to fish for points here, but if I can do this, anyone can do this. So it's just the fear of it. And once you get used to things, and that's why the practice is so important. Once you get used to doing things, it becomes so second nature that you go, why was I scared of this? This makes no sense. Okay, so let's look at, we've sidechained the drums, so we know that's good. Let's look at what I've done. Should I start with the basses, do you think? Let's see. All right, there's an awful lot on here. Gee whiz. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to go through each sound and add another fab filter and make things sound better and worse. But I'm just going to show you what I did with the basses, and then I'm going to go do it some other sounds, so we'll repeat the process from scratch, okay? So let's have a look.
So this, just to echo what Rap's saying, this bit is really just balancing the things out. If you feel like things are too loud, pull them down. If you feel like things are too, like a pushing too hot, pull them down. If you feel like things aren't loud enough, push them up and see how they respond. It's just a case of balancing at this point. And
it's a constant balance. It changes all through the track. You know, you'll be like, oh, the bass sounds much better if I do this. Oh, but now I'm missing a bit of the sub. Okay, I have to push the sub up. And now, so you're constantly just fine tuning it. And I tell you, the most important thing is to give your ears a rest in this process. You can't do this all in one go. I mean, you could, but it would be much better if you went off for a few hours, go for a walk, do whatever you need to do, then come back and hear things fresh, because this is where you can damage your ears. Okay, so let's look at the chain here. I've got my what, am I on the main buses group? Just make sure. Okay, so I'm on a bus here, the main group for the buses, for the bases. And I've got, as I put on every bus, I've got my channel, utility, fab. So we start off with this, and this just controls the overall volume, right? Then I put a Pro Q3, and on here, nothing is happening. Okay, don't know why, but nothing is happening. So I've just kept that on because this is part of my default setup. Whenever I set up a channel, these are all grouped together, so that's not a surprise there. So I'm going to close that. We've explored that now. There's nothing going on with this or with this. Let's see. So on the shaper box here, doesn't seem to be anything going on here as well. Let me just check. Oh, there's a little bit of EQing, and yet it's turned off.
I find I do that all the time. I've got like a string of things, and I've decided not to commit, and then I just turn it off.
Oh, I know what this was. Aha, I remember now. Yeah, I know what I did. I tried to master the whole bus, and I was like, I'm just going to do this on individual sounds, so scrap that. And I put a shaper box on each thing, and that will be the sidechain. Okay, so let's go through each basis. So that's standard, what I've got on my group bus, which is simply the channel limiter and my sidechain, basically. That's it, right? So now let's go through each of these bases and see what I've done to make them sound better with the mastering. So this is my jump up bass. Let's go. The ducking is the side chaining. That's what you're hearing, just so you can hear it. Which I could turn off easily, but if you're wondering why it's phasing in and out, that's because the sidechain is responding to the MIDI. So, okay, so what have we done to this bass? Well, at first we've put a Pro Q3. Let's see what I did, if anything, here, and the first part of the chain. The first part of the chain, I scooped some of the bottom end off. I pulled down some of the middle frequencies to make room, and then I put some of the highs up a little bit more, and that was enough initially. Then I've gone to the wave shaper, and if we look at our wave shaper, we put a lot of effects, and I think we went through this, not on this particular sound, but we went through this on part 3, I believe, and I put some distortion, nothing on the middle, mainly just bumped up that bass distortion there, turned the dry wet up to 100%, and as you can see, nothing's happening, dry wet's all down on this, so just focused on putting some light distortion on there, and if we listen to that, it's very, very, very slight. It's very, very slight. So just a little bit of distortion on there. And next we go to our limiter. I put a limiter on there to tame everything a little bit. And then I put some and this is what I mean. You can put a limiter. How many limiters have you had on a channel, Moisinn?
The most I've had probably about 5. It was like they're my versions of commitments. Every time I put a limiter on, it's like, right, I'm sort of committing to how that sounds, and then move on, do something else, and then go, maybe I could do with another one. And that's
see, men do like it when we put limits on them. Okay, okay, so here we go. Just kidding. Okay, so basically I've put a limiter on after that just to tame the frequencies, to protect the chain so that it doesn't spike going into the convolution reverb. And would you say your reason for putting limiters on is the same, just to protect the chain, basically?
Exactly the same, yeah.
So that's the difference without the Pro Q3 and just the wave shaper. So I'm saying the wave shaper, essential tool. You can't not have it. There's the limiter off, and if you listen carefully, it's cleaned. This is called colouring sometimes. I think I mentioned this last time, where just having an effect on can also just colour it slightly. See, it's not being pushed up or anything. I've literally just got it on. But it did clean it up ever so slightly. Okay, next we have the convolution reverb. Let me pull that down. The reason I keep looking up there is because I've got third monitor up there. I remember when I worked for Hans Zimmer on Mission Impossible, and I flew every week from London for 6 weeks to work on that. He's got this massive studio, wall to wall, analog gear, and then he's got these, I think it's 2 or 3 massive screens that are literally 6 foot by 6 foot wide, and they're curved, and they're just just beautiful. Anyway, I want one. I want the curved monitor. I'll reward myself with that once I've achieved some goals. Okay, I'll set myself a goal and then buy it when I've done that. Okay, so here we are, back to the reverb. I'm talking too much. And in this instance, I didn't go with 3 bands. I literally used one of the presets because I thought that sounded fantastic, and I just played around with some of the knobs here to make it to taste. Just literally played around with every single parameter just to see what I could. I just realised what I said then, just to see what I could do, and it's all to taste. So do play around with the parameters.
Yeah, I agree. Playing around with bits and bobs is always fun.
My mind went to the naughty place. Okay, so here we go. Playing with knobs is good. All right, here we go. So we turn off the reverb. Wow. With. It's mental, isn't it, what a little bit of reverb can do? Isn't that amazing? So then I put an EQA after that because I wanted to make sure everything was shaved off the bottom here. I'm just cutting off anything that isn't needed. And in fact, I could go as far as to cut off a little bit of the tops as well and just make sure it's tidy because there's nothing. All the actions here. We want to keep all things clean as possible. And then, because this is my basic EQ, I always have, I don't know why, I use so many EQs. I think I do what you do with limiters. And then I've got into a more complex EQ. Let's get rid of this. The Pro Q3. And I have added even more mid-range, well, MIDI sort of range. You'll listen to the difference. Just constantly tightening things up. So this is now cleaner than if I let me see if I can group this all. 1 second. Give me a second. God, my fingers are too cold. I can't work my mouse.
Oh, did they crack?
Yeah, I just cracked them. Sorry.
Jealous. I wish I could do that.
What do you mean? You just crack them?
Nope, can't do it. It never happens.
You don't have any bones. No bones. Okay, so I've grouped these all. So oh my gosh.
So different.
Now this is important because so many times, and this happened to me before I learnt the secret language of audio jitsu and sound design, I would start to make a tune. I'd really have the motivation to do it, and I'd be all excited, and I'd go, okay, this is a good bass preset. This is when I was just relearning everything, and because it sounds so crap, you just lose your mojo. You just lose. It breaks your heart because it's like, oh, I'm just crap, I'm horrible. I promise you, if you learn the sound design, and you too will be able to suddenly make the tracks that sound great and go, now this sounds like a bass, right? Don't be disheartened if you're a beginner. You have to learn to walk. You have to crawl first before you can walk. And then, you run. So it's learning Ableton or whatever DAW you're on. And then it's learning, how to create sounds. And it's a long process. I'm 54. I've been doing this since I was 16 years old, But I would say that I've only really felt like I've started to make tracks the last, year. Can you believe that? So where was I? Okay, so all we're doing is adding limiters if we need to tame peaks, and then EQing and constantly getting it to a place where it doesn't sound muddy. Because if you listen to this without all that stuff, it's super muddy, right? Horrible. And I'd even go a step further on this. I would then bounce this, because I can hear a little artifacts happening afterwards, and I would cut that out. so that it's completely clean, so that like there is nothing in this bass. Can you hear it? That artifacts? So let's just, I'll show you. I'm going to resample this. My hands are so cold. I don't know what's wrong with me. Don't think I have the heating on either. Let's just resample this. And I can then listen to this and go, what do I want to cut out? Is there anything that's like Ross Clark? Sorry, everyone. 'Cause that was just
I've got a little funny story about that. There was a guy that I was talking to, and he says to me, I said, I've got this tune on my hard drive. I hate it. I'm not doing anything with it. Have a listen. See if you can do anything with it. He listened to it. It was like ... And then he goes, send me the Ross Clark stems. And it just always makes me laugh every single time I hear anyone say that.
I don't know why that is my go-to when I'm shocked. It's my it just comes out. It's like I've made Frost laugh a number of times, and I'm like, it's like, what is, I don't know. Right, see this? I can hear an artifacts going on in there, so I'm just gonna cut that, and I may just fade it out, or I may cut that piece out completely. It depends. So I want to see how this sounds. And I can see that it's even further in than that. So it could be that a more of a fade is needed. Now it's gone. It's too much maybe, but the point is you can then get rid of everything and then bounce this as a stem for remixing with your sidechain in the mix, you know. When I'm exporting and sending my stuff to get mastered, if I'm doing stem by stem mixing, so I send it to two separate people. I do stem by stem. I send it for someone to do stem by stem mixing because I can't be bothered to do all this stuff because it's tedious. I know that sounds really lazy, but I'd much rather just make tracks, goody, and just keep making amazing tracks. And then, you know, but it's good to know you can do it, right? But I don't export with the sidechain, so I let them do that, you know, because. But if you're testing it out for yourself for the night, then I absolutely would. I hope this makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely.
So now I'm going to just unsolo this and cut out. So you can hear, you can get rid of any naughty artifacts. Let me just push that volume up a little bit. And you don't have the weird stuff that's happening underneath. So it is good to do that. I probably will do that with this when I'm going through everything. I'm going to get rid of that channel for now though. So yeah, it's a lot of cleanup. And that's basically what you're doing. You're a janitor. You're cleaning up your sounds constantly. And that is what I'm doing on every single sound that I've got here. Same thing with the sub. We've got serum. We've got a little cleanup with the, well, I'll just go through it just so you can, one more time. And then we'll do it from scratch on something else. If I'm going too slow, do let me know. If I'm going too fast, there's nothing I can do about that now because I'm going as slow as I can. Okay, I'm just going to close everything else. It's annoying me. Okay, so where were we? Sub. Let's look at the sub. Solo this puppy. The popping is from the sidechain, so I'll probably have to address that with LFO and smooth it out. Or I could go to Serum and play around with the phase parameter. That might help as well. Subs are tricky. So let's have a look and see what I did and reverse engineer it. Okay, so we've got Serum, obviously, and it's just a plain sub. So how did I get it to pump like that? It's a side chaining. Let's have a look at this thing and see if I've done any work on here. Okay, so for the sub, you can see that I've pulled that middle section right down like we talked about last week to give the mids and that, especially that other bass, which is much more MIDI and any synths or things that are going to come through. I want to give them rude. Josh, do you like my Junglist t-shirt, by the way? Isn't that cool?
I do. I really want one.
Just go to my store, mate.
On the way now.
Special discount.
Back in a sec.
Oh, actually, I've got to post some links in the chat, but I'll do them in a second. Yeah, so I've pulled the mids down, bumped up the top a little bit, and if you hear the difference, It's slight. It's just cleaning up. And then I put a wave shaper on here. Let's see. And nothing on the tops. I've literally distorted the bottom here. That's it. So without the wave shaper, can't even hear it. I just wanted a bit more of a boom punch a little bit. So a little bit more, because I took some of the bottoms off on the EQ and I prefer to add them in the distortion unit. Put a limiter here again to protect the next thing that's happening in the chain. As you can see, it's all the way down. Just keeping that nice and tame, taming those wildness. And then I've got a convolution reverb, which I didn't use because it's sub. EQ8, which I didn't use, so let's just close those up. Don't need those. And then what I've done is, this is the little bit of mastering I've added on the top. And this took some time because you've got to go through the frequencies and see what works. So, okay, this didn't take that much time. I basically shaved off all the top. Let's see it with. So you see all this mess down here on the right hand side? We got rid of all those tops because we didn't need them. So if I took this off, I can hear a little bit, and again, you've got to start training your ears to listen to the differences, but it's a little bit more muddy, whereas it's slightly clearer now. So that should go nice and sit with our basses. Of course, it's a constant up and down and doing all this stuff. So let's go and do this from scratch on another sound, because I've done this to the drums and it sounds really different on the drums. The drums sound so much better now, and you go through each, I would say each major sound. Like if I was, definitely the vocals, definitely a synth. I don't know what else is on this track that I can do this to. Actually, let me have a listen. Ah, yeah, that bass line. Okay. This is my originally titled Serum bass, because I got it off Serum, the plugin. Let's go to my sub-focus bass. It's a side chain, which is why it's glitching, in case you're wondering.
Back to the old school. Back to the old school.
Now I can hear the side chain is too much on there, so I'm going to have to either do something separate for here, or delete the side chain, or automate the side chaining so it's not as extreme on this section. So as you're going along, you start to hear new problems that arise from the thing that you did in the drop. But I want the drop to be perfect, so I'm working backwards from the drop, the bass and everything, and then I'm going to work on all the others. No point working on the lesser primary sounds and then it comes to your main meat and potatoes and you're sort of screwed. Would you say that's a good way to...
Yeah, constant back and forth, and you just focus on the mains.
Constant back and forth. Just want to do one thing real quick. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to just drop... This is the last talk for Open the Daw for a while. We are going to do more. We're thinking of doing them once a month or twice a month, maybe just once a month. And meanwhile, keep signing up for Open the Daw, because I will re-poll everybody in another 3 months. And if we've got more people subscribing, we need 100 people to subscribe to open a subscription at the price you want, which I think you want $9.99 according to the other poll, which is super cheap, but I understand because I'm in the same boat as you. And in order to have that many people, and for Josh and I or me or whoever my guests are to put this much effort in, we'll need 100 people. So keep signing up, spreading the word, and we'll do this. And let me just copy and paste this for a second and drop this in the chat. And then we'll continue. All right, I'm just going to stop presenting 1 second. Exit full screen. And let's stop the presenter and just put this in here. Hopefully, let me just...
Yeah, they're all through.
Yeah, they're all through?
Yep.
Okay. All right, there we go. Let me go back to presenting. Oh. Share screen. Video here. Okay, so... Right, okay. So back to where we were then. Let me just make my screen big as well. I can see now that there's a problem, that the side chaining is going to cause me problems for this section of the bass, but that's okay. I call this sub-focus bass.
It sound like that.
Well, yeah. Well, I was trying to make a bass like what he does. Do, 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 do. And I think I did. Okay, so let's loop this section. And let's apply the mastering technique that I've been doing, mixing technique, to get this bass to sound as sharp as the other ones or as good. I'm going to take the sidechain off for a second. I've still got... there you go. That's why. These two are on. Naughty. Sometimes when you have 4 shaper boxes on your chain. Okay, let's go back to this one. So the question I want to ask myself is it as clean as it can be? And what else do I need to put on here? Now, I'm curious what Josh would put on here, but I would start probably with another EQ tool and start from there, or would you do something different? Would you put a limiter on? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'd probably put an EQ and a limiter straight away.
In which order?
EQ first, and then a limiter.
Okay, that's exactly what I'd have done. I'm curious to always hear another producer's way of doing things. Quite interesting. Okay, so we've got all this stuff on here. We've got convolution. Let's just close down what we're not using. Oh, I do want to see how much I've cleaned this sound up initially. Okay, so I have done quite a lot of work to this sound already. So without this... So it's quite a big difference. Without the wave shaper... Let's just take a look. Why does it do that?
Mine does that sometimes.
Such a pain in the bottom. Oh, it keeps doing it. This is very large now. So you can see I've done some work to the mid band, nothing on the tops, and nothing on the bottom. So I could probably go to town on this sound a lot more, to be honest with you, and make it really pop. And there's some sausage fattener on there as well. With, without. And you can see together, these things are all giving it important character and presence. I want this to be really nasty and like acid house and sort of a bit dangerous sounding. So, you know, it's the characteristics of this is quite important. So let's go to filter. And let's go put Pro Q3 after the auto filter. I'm going to put, because that's just in fact. I'm going to get rid of this one. And I'm going to drop a limiter in there just because we're on the same page. And leave that.
Leave that. Just putting his hat on. Just leaving his hat.
Oh, we talked about this the other day. I'm not going to say it. It's too rude. It's too rude. Okay. Right. What is this? The EQ. Okay, so what I want to do is listen to it in context with everything.
Back to the old school. Back to the old school. Going back to the old school.
And I'm just going to start playing around with frequencies. So
Back to the old school.
the first thing I'm noticing is that I can get rid of some weight here. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of...
Back to the old school. Back to the old school. Going back to the old school.
And I'm just going to play around with peaks and valleys and see what sounds good.
Back to the old school. Back to the old school.
And also, having the limiter is going to protect you in case you go a little bit too mental. And I'm very nervous about doing that, especially when people are listening. But also for your own ears. The other day I had an accident in the studio where I accidentally on the wave shaper pulled the bass into, and it just was like, and my ears were like, and I was like, frightened the hell out of me. My plugins scare me.
Back back to the old school.
So start playing around and just listen to what sounds good.
Back to the old school. Back to the old school. Going back to the old school. Back to the old school.
And then A-B it, right? Turn it off and on and see, like, if it makes a difference. Josh, feel free to, I can hear you.
Yeah, Rap, I've got a... I've just been looking while you were doing this. I've got a little image that I could share, which really supports the theory behind what you're doing. If you want me to show it,
let's do it. Let me, and I'll get back to this, but I just want to A/B this before we do that. Hold on one second.
Back to the old school. Back to the old school. Going back to the old school. Back to the old school. Back to the old school. Going back to the old school. Back to the old school. Back to the old school. Going back to the old school. Back to the old school.
So let's listen on its own. Got their tiny little adjustments. These aren't huge changes. We're like, oh my God, I can totally hear. You've got to listen for it. I'm not sure if you can hear it. Off. On. Slight. Sorry, off. I'm hitting the wrong one. Sorry, I hit the wrong one. I was hitting the limiter like a twit. Here it is, on. Off. It's already
this is a
different.
fantastic bass. I want it.
So already a big difference just by messing with that. Now that might mess with the equilibrium. God, that made me sweat then. I got all nervous doing this. I don't know why. I'll show you. I will flick to your picture in a second. But this might then mess with the equilibrium of the next part of the bass that's coming in. And this is where then you'll just turn down levels and figure that out. So I may need to adjust that.
Back to the old school. Back to the old school. Going back to the old school.
So let's see if that messes.
Back to the old school.
Let's see if that messes with it.
Back to the old. Back to the old.
So I can tell it's a bit too loud, so I just need to turn that down a bit, basically.
Back to the old school. Back to the old school.
And then adjust the sidechain. Now what I'm going to do is just get Josh to show you what he wanted to show you, because I think that's really valuable. See, it's not that hard when you go slowly and figure this stuff out. Stop screen. What am I presenting?
Just the screen. Right, so this is taken from a textbook, and I didn't take it from there. It was Face, big up Face. And it's a textbook, a learning resource for mix engineers. And what it is you see how rap was sort of boosted in various different places. If you sort of reference this chart, so for example, along this red side, you've got 62 hertz all the way up to 1K, 2K, 4K, 16K, and so on. There's a lot of words on here, so bear with it. So if you were to boost at 1K, you start sort of getting a more nasal sound. If you start sort of boosting 500, you get sort of a warm sound, or it could be boxy. That's what the vocabulary to use and think about when you're sort of pushing different frequencies in a sound. So if you notice these ones on the bottom
Hold
as well,
on a minute.
if you have
extended bottom, full extended bottom.
yeah, literally, it's so what.
It is.
But it's
Take a
down at
screenshot of this, guys. Take a screenshot of this because this will really help you. Ooh.
Yeah, so the thin, so you notice how it stretches from around about 70 to 80 hertz all the way up to 600. If you have a lack of this in your mix or in your specific sound, it's going to sound thin. The same with over here. If you have a lack of 5K, 10K, up to 16K, the sound is going to sound dull. So you might need to boost it up to make it feel brighter, harsh, edgy, or present. The same also applies to like sort of 3K to 4K. If you have a lack of it, it starts to feel sweet and warm. And if you were to pull down in this 4K region to give this warm feeling and boost in the 500 region to give an even warmer feeling, this is a really nice rough guideline to get like the vocabulary in your head so that you can think, oh, my sound sounds really thin. And you can sort of know why, because you're lacking this area.
It's amazing, isn't it? Just like a little trick, if your snares are feeling not punchy enough and you boost them at like 210, you know, you get that nice little kick in the snare.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So I think what would be good, Josh, is because I've sort of shown the process from scratch and on what I've got. It might be good if you did some of your stereo explanation about mid, size, all of that stuff. I'm sure people want to hear that.
Sure.
And
sounds great.
Yeah, do you feel well enough to swap over, or do you want me to continue? You tell me.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, there's a brave man.
There we go. So
hold on, wait. Well, is that right? Is that the right? Have I got your monitor up?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's fine.
The space between the speakers. Okay, that's you. Jolly good.
So I would have named. There's a bit of like backstory to this before I sort of actually open the door, and it sort of supports that image that we've just looked at. And the section would be called the space between the speakers, because as soon as I sort of learnt this, it started making me feel. Okay, this has gone all weird now. Bear with me.
Do you want me to remove it and let you put it back in again?
So good. There we go. I'll
Okay.
leave that doing that. So yeah, the space between the speakers, it's sort of like a theory that really helped me understand with the mixing of how to like sit things in a certain place. And let me just get a little square here and get rid of this so I can illustrate. Tell you what, file new, always the easiest way. And I'll fill it black so it's not so harsh. God, I don't use paint very often. Right. So, if we have two speakers. Bear with. I need a lesson on paint, obviously.
I don't even know what that is. This is new for me.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a quick, simple way of illustrating something, but that didn't work, did it? There we go, right. I'll do it white. So if you have a speaker here, my really badly drawn speaker, and you also have a speaker here, they're not the same brand. Yeah.
They don't look like speakers, mate.
No. Oh, there you go. I'll give it a bit of 3D sort of 3D vibe. It's like a square egg.
What the hell? This is brilliant.
So,
it was all going so well.
it was until Moisinn with a weird flu and anyway.
No, I love this. It's brilliant. Oh my god, I'm dying.
So and then here's should we do DJ Rap or should we do me? Let's do me. I wouldn't do that. This is me here.
Okay.
With quite an angry face, right? So when you're hearing sound, obviously they travel from the speakers to your. I tell you what, let me do that in a different colour. So
Don't get hung up on the colours, Josh.
Fuck! I need to do the different colours. Why is it not changing? Let's see if this works. Yay! Right, so you do. So that's where the sound comes in, right? That's because we have stereophonic audio. And believe it or not, the origins of stereo are quite a funny story. So it was invented in the 1930s by a guy called Alan Blumlein. And he patented stereo records, stereo films, and surround sound. And what happens is he was in the cinema in early 1931 with his wife. And as the sound reproduction systems then were only mono, it would have it so that the person on the cinema screen would be on the right hand side, and it would sound like it's coming from the centre, and it would be a bit rubbish. So he turned to his wife and he said, I know how to fix this. And he came up with this system of having 2 different stereo speakers, so that you could bias something. So if you biased something towards the right hand side over here, say 80%, and then took it away from here like 20%, it would sound like the sound is actually coming from this point in the speakers.
I just see this as a meme all over the internet now. The technical side of teaching.
with square eggs and the
square
weird
eggs.
So this kind of explains the stereo field, because now all of a sudden with this stereo information that we've got, there's a distance between here and here. And it's our brain then interprets where that thing is. So obviously we also have an up and down as well. So let's call it the confines of that at this top line here. In fact, let me get rid of the green one so that we can see. So we also have an up and down. So you can picture this while you're like in a club or something like that. And when you're stood there directly in front of the DJ booth, you can feel the bass in sort of like your stomach, your whole body. You can feel the kick hitting you in the chest. You can feel the snare sort of smack you straight in the eyes. And then you can also, with all the hi-hats and all the different things going off above you, they all sort of sit quite high up here. And then the sibilance is even higher, and it sounds like the sizzle of the snare is like right over the top of you. And that's to do with frequency. So in our doors, it goes from left to right, which you'll notice with like FabFilter Pro Q. So if I bring one up, which one do I have one on? So here on a Pro Q, you've got like 0 hertz down the bottom and then 20k right at the top. If you were to tip this on its side, you can sort of visualize how it feels when you're in a club environment. So you've got the sub that's sort of down here, and then you've got the kick, then you've got the snare sort of in the middle. Snare, that's snapper. And then you've got hats at the top. Sorry about my bad drawing. But that's sort of like, now when that's happening, obviously when you mix it, you've got these elements that are sitting in this particular range, and they sit really nicely there, and you can distinguish where they are. And you can also distinguish if a hi-hat goes off up in this top left-hand corner and a ride goes off in the top right-hand. You can sort of gauge where those things sit in the mix. And that's done by using lots of different methods. So I've got a track where I feel as though that with the stereo field, I've placed things in a really interesting place. And I'll just play it through to the drop, and then I'll explain where I've put them and sort of why and how it makes you feel like that. So just testing audio. We've got audio?
Yep.
Okay. So you can hear that clock is somewhere. Your brain is working out that
Nice. Love your Nero.
I do. So if I sort of go from the start, it incorporates both of those techniques. The weird drawing that I've had with stereo positioning of different things. And also the the frequency scale. So I bared it in mind that when I was creating the intro, I really wanted it to feel dead warm, and I wanted it to feel as though that, you know, there wasn't much presence, you know, there wasn't much of this sort of region here, to build up to the drop, which has plenty of presence coming in and out. So the very first element, I knew that we needed a pad, something to set the scene. And I knew that it wanted to sort of be warm, and it didn't want to be too present, because what makes a good track and a mix is that you have, in the intro, you have like a lack of presence, and then when it drops, you have this overwhelming sense that there's a presence that attacks you, and it comes in, and it's like heavy, you know? So with the EQing on this, I had a look at it. Okay, granted, I haven't done much on it, but the vast majority of it is all sort of in this mid-range. There's not much high. Let me give you a great example. If I was to put a what's it called?
He doesn't mean that the intro shouldn't have any presence, by the way. That's he's talking about the EQing side of things, right? Because obviously the whole track has a vibe and presence and stuff like that. Just so we're clear.
Yeah. The presence is more to do with like that. It's definitely got presence, but it's the overwhelming sense of presence. I'll actually make it have now an overwhelming sense of presence, and it just won't quite feel right.
Be careful with that sound.
I mean, that could be a vibe. That could be a vibe. But it wasn't quite something that I was going for. There you go.
Josh, please turn that down. It's freaking me out. This is where I worry you're going to hit the wrong. This is so sensitive, this plugin, that if you just push it the wrong way, you get
it just goes bang.
It goes bang. So yeah, be careful.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but cool.
Yeah, so that was the intention behind that, and also regarding the stereo sort of spectrum, this wanted to be quite a sound that sort of fluctuates between the left and right. So if I bring my tasty diagram back up again, let me see if I can get rid of these little things. So this pad, I sort of felt as though it wanted to be sitting quite low, so you could sort of feel it in your chest, and it sort of oscillates between like left and right, so it's quite wide and it's quite big, and it feels like it's giving you a nice hook.
You.
Yeah, exactly. And so if I was to get rid of any of that stereo information and just put it directly down the middle, I can use MZ for that, which is plugins. Here.
Vospango.
Vospango. So if I mute the side information, put it straight down the middle, the pad sort of loses its life. Solo it.
That's mad, isn't it?
So it's kind of like it's there and it still exists as itself, which is really important. But then there, it feels like it's sort of moving left and right, it's moving around, and it gives you that airy sort of feeling, but it also doesn't collapse and disappear when you mute the mids.
Okay, and just so I can see, and all you did to it was to do that. So was it EQing? Was it? I'm sorry, I'm trying to follow along.
That's all right.
What you did to make that sound so lovely.
So it was Endless Smile is a really good, which you've recommended to me, a really good plugin that gives you this real sense of space. So I use that, and he looks really sad right now, so let's cheer him up a bit. Wow.
I've done that when I've been buzzed before, where I've like videoed myself with this plugin and then just sent it to my mate. She's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh,
I felt the hesitation. I felt the hesitation in your voice there. Like, shall I say?
Shall I share the story of things I did when I was stupid and high? Okay.
But yeah, so as the tune sort of develops, I wanted to incorporate that presence, and I felt like the best way to do that was like with a higher chord and with some drums, right? For timing too, yeah? Oh, I didn't even mention the clock. So the clock. This has got a little reverb on it. So without the reverb... Okay, it's got a little bit into the audio. Yeah, and it was a little bit too harsh. It was a little bit too a little bit boring, and it didn't exist anywhere. Like my brain wasn't telling me, oh, this is like a dissonant clock. It was like it was right in front of me. So I put this little spring reverb on it, and it really set it back in the distance. And again, if I go back to this sort of thing here, we now actually incorporate another dimension, which now if I draw this into a 3D box, which is going to be terrible, I'm so sorry. But all of a sudden, we've got this other dimension of things. So now you can have, oh my God, it's so bad, but you can have something right in front, sort of there, or you can have it right at the back. And the clock, I felt, needed to be pushed to the back. So to do that, as opposed to this, I put the springs on it. See how it pushes it?
Now, I will say something here, because Josh, cause there is two types of people. There are people that just analyze things, like Josh is very analytical and will be like, this needs to be put in this area. And then there are other people like me, which are just like, where does it just sound good? It's really that simple. Where do you think it sounds good? When you're using a microphone and you've got reverb, sometimes there are plugins that show you what it's like if the mic was set in the back of the room, if you were recording a sound and the mic is set in front of you. It's really just, where does it sound good? You can understand the science of it, like Moisinn here, but don't be put off if you're like, I don't understand the science. Just where does it feel that it should be to you? You know, that's really what you've got to think about.
Yeah, that's a super good point to make. I do go into things like quite analytically, and I do go into them and think, why does this happen? Why does this need to go there? But yes, if you feel like it's, you're using your ears and you're not thinking a bit like that, just move the thing into that area, and if it sounds good, it usually is probably going to be right.
And also, common sense tells you, if you look at the way a band is set up, typically on any major stage, where is the singer? They walk all, where's the drums? Where's the bass? Certain things have to be in the middle and have to be in the front, and certain things can just be in the distance. But it really is, someone else might have liked that clock sound without the reverb. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like, what do you think sounds good?
Yeah, 100%.
Josh, we are nearly at 9 o'clock. I don't know how much more of this you've got to. We can go back if we have time, but we have to get to questions as well.
Yeah, no problem. What time do you think is good for questions? 9?
Well, we can do the questions and then go back to this if we've got some time. But I would say 9 o'clock is when we normally do the questions.
Yeah, no problem. I could speak about it for hours, but literally I could. But I think, what main point did I sort of have with it? I think the development of the intro, if I just do this one last piece here, where as we start getting it was mainly the drums. So I brought these drums in a different way, rather than them being straight drums. So you can tell with that, like, the drums are like straight there, they're straight in the middle, and they would sort of live directly in the middle. And again, it was the same principle. I felt like, because it was the intro, I needed to push everything to the back and just make it sound a little smoother than what it was. So all I did was added an EQ to get rid of too much of the bass, because I didn't want any energy in the drums, really. I wanted them to just tick along. If I solo them. And then I felt like, because of that hissing and the harshness, it had a bit too much presence, because I wanted that presence to arrive when the drop happened. So I used a little feedback tool, which is called Rift Feedback Light, which is it's just a delay. Let's do a little ping pong delay, and that gave it this texture. So automatically it lives elsewhere now. Then I still felt as though it was present, so I decided to do mid-side EQing, just to sort of bring the mids forward and the side down, so that it didn't lose itself too much. And then a final little sound on the end, I just lowered the presence a little bit in this area. So again, I'll just quickly refer back to...
Now, he could have done parallel effects with this as well. He could have easily put this in a rack and kept the dry and had all those things underneath. Depends what you want. See what I mean? There's no right way. It's like just what is it you want, and he wanted that effect to overpower the dry drum, or you know, where you could have had that time stretchy effect on a separate channel underneath, and both parallel effects. That's all that is. It's like you've got the dry drum and then you've got the same channel copied over, and we did this in one of the Open the Doors, and it's just got all the effects, so it's blended in. Whereas he wanted this to overpower it and then put it in a different sort of vibe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and because it was the intro, it was just a case of sort of like broad strokes, and yeah, it made those drums contrast between that section, and then when it actually drops, just brings it forward right into the front of the mix, and then it gives you that bit more of an impact from this to that.
See, but that's what gives it that weight. It's all these little details that you might not realize that give the track the weight, and why, especially with that neuro style. That's the style of this genre, right? It's like that weight has to come in, and if he had not done all those little nuances and those little details, then that impact would have been lost. So sometimes if your track isn't hitting right, it makes sense just to look at that. Should we look at questions, or have you got more you'd like to show?
That's perfect.
So look, we are not sure what we're going to do from here. Like I said, we'll let you know when the next one is. We will do another one. I think we'll do it once a month, definitely. But we've got to figure out how to do that, because it's much easier to do 4, because then we can show you from start to finish. But whilst we think about a subscription, and the more people you can spread this around to, it would really help us. Please do fill in that poll if you can. Be so kind, because that helps us. And once we feel we've got to about 100 subscribers, we can set something up where we teach people who have subscribed from start to finish, and we'll spend a month on drums, a month on bass, a month on everything, and we'll get through to the track. So it'll be much slower, but it'll be really, really detailed, and we'll have you up and running making tracks before you know what you're doing, and doing it well too. All right, I'm going to go to some questions, because it is 9 o'clock and the questions are important. I've got a question here. MIDI keyboards. Do I need one? Do you and Moisinn use one? If so, which would you recommend for a beginner? I'll take this if that's all right, Moisinn, because I have a page ready here. So, and who's this from? Paul. Hello, Paul. So, let me just share a page. Present, share screen, Chrome tab. There's lots and lots of keyboards out there. Yes, you do need a MIDI keyboard. I mean, some people don't, but I do. But you can certainly, you can turn your laptop into a keyboard, actually. So there are certain keys you just press, and your I can't remember the function keys. I don't know if you remember, Josh, but it turns your keyboard, your laptop, into actual keys you can play. So you can do that. I have a little mini keyboard that I take on the plane with me if I like. But there are loads of keyboards, and they start very reasonably priced. From M Audio is fantastic, and they start from £38 all the way up, as you can see here. Feel free to take a screenshot. Just Google keyboard for beginners. But you definitely don't need one, but I find that I do. And what do I use? I've got an old keyboard. This thing's so old. Oh my god! I had a Korg. I had an M1. This is an Axion 67. God, that's all. I mean, I just wanted a big, heavy, weighted keyboard that felt like I was playing the piano, because I play the piano. So for me, that was important.
Mad piano skills.
Yeah, so that I wanted something that felt heavy and weighted. So I hope that answers your question. Mark Whitfield is asking about warping and sampling tracks. Unfortunately, that would take a good hour to show, so I would suggest that you either have watched some YouTube videos on that. I've got tons of videos that I've made on that on my Music Tech Collective page on YouTube if you want to go as a free resource. But it's not that difficult. But again, it does require a bit more than a few minutes, and I can't explain it without going into an hour-long lesson. So sorry about that one, but that's that. How do you make... What question did I send you the questions, Josh?
Yeah,
well?
how do you make a screaming acid lead?
I think we did that one already. We did that last week. So what makes Valhalla Reverb so great? How is it different than other reverb plugins? She just sounds cool, doesn't it, Valhalla?
Yeah, it does. That's what attracted me to it.
No, it's got so many. So the bundle, the Valhalla bundle is fantastic, and it's got plate, reverb, shorts for big reverbs and all that. It's just got the whole everything you'll need. But the truth is, there are a lot of great reverb units out there. What I would suggest is that you just try whatever you want. There's so many good ones, but for me, Valhalla has everything you possibly need, whether you're looking for massive delays, massive reverbs, or just small rooms, or whether you're, they've just got hundreds and hundreds of choices. That's what I like about Valhalla. So
yeah, same.
What's the next question? I did the sidechain. There you go. That's done. Is mastering, you can take this if you want.
Yeah, so is mastering the same regardless of genre? You use compound audio, but are they only for D&B? Does a hip-hop producer need to use someone else, and a trance producer use yet another, and so on? So
what a great question.
It is. It is. No, mastering is the same, but while mastering's happening, it just requires a little bit of a tuned ear to because different genres have different styles of what you do. So like trance might be hit quite hard with the mastering. Drum and bass definitely is, but house, like melodic and tropical house, would have a little bit of a lighter approach. The same with liquid drum and bass or anything like that. So depends.
See, I would feel a bit nervous about sending a house track to a drum and bass guy to master who's never heard of a house track, because you want to make sure that whoever's mastering your tracks understands the genres, because with drum and bass, we all know that the snare hits really hard, harder than the kick in perception, and it's all about the sub. But in house music, or tech house particularly, which I produce as well, it's all about the kick, and that becomes the sub as well. So if someone doesn't understand that predominantly, so I kind of feel they need to understand a bit the genres, but at the same time, a good way to know who's mastering tracks is you can always message the artist and say, back in the day on the records, it would tell you who mastered. Like it was all of my old albums says beautifully mastered by blah blah blah, and it would tell you, and you could find out that way. But you can definitely contact people and find out who's the best master, or you could just Google it. My light's just flashing on and off. My mum is in the session.
Her presence.
Yeah. What's the next question? Let's see. Is my not wishing to make things awkward? Moisinn was saying how he struggled to get attention from labels. So why didn't Rap put her stuff out on his label? How do you guys end up working together on this? Do the two of you produce with each other? I'll answer that one. That's easy. And you can answer it as well. Moisinn wasn't struggling. He was struggling initially, but now labels just want him left, right, and centre. Because he was predominantly focused on Nero, I wasn't. So I've always thought he was a fantastic artist. I made sure to blow him up whenever I can, and I make sure to put him on my proper ammo nights. By the way, the next one's March 17th. Make sure you get down there. And, I've always supported him. But I'm only going to put music out on my label that I play. So it doesn't make sense for me to put out a tune just because it's great, but it's not something I'm going to play and put my heart and soul into. So only because he just likes a different style of music. The moment he makes a tune that is more my style, you better believe I'll be fighting off the other labels with a big stick. Yeah,
that does drive home quite an important point, actually. When you are pushing to labels, try to send them tunes that fit. Like you wouldn't send Liquidity a hard house track. It's like, it's got to fit them, and it's got to work for them as well. So that's pretty much why.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's see. What's the best way to get a record label mailing list for promos? What's the best way to get onto a record label mailing list for promos? What's the rules around using film samples to added into your track. Okay, so basically film samples and how to get on the mailing list for promos. Mailing list for promos. Yeah, you have to be either playing at a radio station or you have to be sort of known. But if you're a new DJ, I mean, and you've got no social media presence and you're not playing on a radio, I think it's going to be very difficult for you to get on those mailing lists. So you do have to have something going on. So the best way is to approach the label and say, hey, I play on Rinse FM, I'm on blah, 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 blah. I'm a fairly new DJ, but I'm getting a lot of traction with my show. I would love to push all your new tunes. And sometimes people who are newer will be hungrier to push your tunes. So I like to give new people a chance, but they do have to have a medium to project those tunes onto. So if you just a bedroom DJ and you're like, hey, love your tunes, going to get them for free, the answer is going to be a big fat no. Film samples, you've got to be very careful with film samples. You can get fined up to £250,000 for using a film sample, especially things like Batman and things like that in your tracks. So be very, very careful. If the track's free on SoundCloud, you won't get into any trouble. If you're giving it away, you're fine. So it could be great to use a film sample to get some notice and attention on SoundCloud and say, give everyone, check out my new track, it's for you, download it here. You know, so it could be like used in that way, and that's fine. But if you have a track and it's successful, they will come after you sometimes. It depends how big the track is. So be very, very careful with that stuff. DJing. When you're out on the road doing 3 gigs in one night, do you play the same set of tracks or different tracks? That's a great question. I'll let you start with that, Moisinn.
So if the gigs are like in close succession and I know that they're like apart from one another, then I will probably play the same set-ish, maybe change a few little things, and it gives me a chance to try out different blends in a live environment. But yeah, usually if the gigs are far apart, I kind of play the tunes that I'm liking at the moment, sort of thing.
Yeah, someone's asking, how did so-and-so, somebody get away? People get away with it all the time. It depends. If your record's only underground, chances are they haven't heard it, so they don't know that you're using it. And if you've only sold like few hundred copies, it's not even worth their aggro to come after you. But you'd have to have a big tune to be on their radar, and that's how they'd know. Sorry. Yeah, for me, if I'm playing 3 sets in one night, which I refuse to do, that would kill me. It depends. If I could be doing Moondance and then doing a modern gig, so that would be 2 completely separate sets. I think that for me, I just go on and vibe and see what the crowd want. I don't have a set. I do have some mixes that I like to play with each other, and I do that because I just like to. I never get sick of them. But really, just feel it, and that's it for that one. What's the best way to overcome a bad sound system with DJing? You've probably experienced that, have you, Moisinn, at this point?
Yes, I've actually got a funny story about that. There was a gig just before Christmas, and it was set to be really good. It was set to be sold out. It was a small club, and got there, great. Couple of warm-up DJs were on, great. Couple of other bigger DJs were on, great. Headliners were on, great. Then I sort of came on sort of afterwards, and the sub was not working at all, right? The floor emptied. It completely emptied. The club very quickly just completely emptied because it was just this high tinny, no sub, no vibe. And to combat it, all I did was kept playing and enjoyed myself. There was like a person in the corner, sort of like,
all your eardrums. Who cares? It's the one person on the dance floor.
Yeah.
I had a terrible time at Ministry of Sound once, and that's a very unlucky club for me to play at. I just never have a good experience there. I don't know why, but I went on the other day when I was playing there, and the monitors weren't working, and it's a big club, so I couldn't mix at all because you need the monitors in a big club. There's no way you can do it. And I was sledging, and I was like, what the hell? And I was telling them like the monitors aren't working, and they just stood there like. You know, it's like they're not working, and I think they just thought I was being a diva. Like it was fine for everybody else, but they had actually automatically cut themselves out, and it took 20 minutes before the monitors came back on. So, yeah, there's nothing you can do. Be professional, carry on, or if you can't carry on, then just wait for someone to fix it. It's not your job, you know. It's a person at the club's job, and they'll fix it. Hopefully, it's a really hard one when stuff goes wrong.
Yeah,
sometimes
that's
it's funny
something.
though. Sometimes it can be funny as well because I've had that happen when I was performing with my band. everything just cut out, and I ended up singing a cappella. So you can make the best of it or the worst of it.
Yeah, I think sometimes it is just a case of being like, be professional, you know, and do what you need to do. And I find as well that a lot of people are looking at the DJ for the sound system, which actually there's supposed to be sound engineers that sort the sound system out that are hired sort of by the club. It's like, it's not me.
It's the worst feeling, because you're completely humiliated, because you know everyone's looking at you going, and you are doing what to fix this? And you're like, it's not my job. I don't know how to fix that stuff. I just
doing this.
I just play the music and make the music. Don't hate me. And but everyone's staring at you, and you're trying to look cool and have a conversation with someone, and you know, it's a horrible, mortifying experience. All right, let's look at this last question here. It says, when you drop a mix, are you looking at the crowd and vibe, or focus on the mix itself? We'll both answer this, I'm sure. You go first.
Yeah, so the way I usually work is I've got blocks of tunes that I know that are in my head on my USB, and I'll play like 3 tunes and have a little look and see how people respond to it. And then by the time you sort of get into it, it's like I look down, I'm doing the mix, I look up, I see how people reacted from different things, and sort of move and navigate through my library of tunes according to what they're feeling. So it's kind of like on the fly sort of thing, in a way.
For me, I definitely need to look at the crowd. I need to see they're okay. And if they're vibing, and then I find that one person that I like to focus on, and I focus on him or her, and you know, they'll be like my target. Or like, well, I want to make this person go insane. How can I do that? So I find the one person who's like not really vibing, and I'm like, right, you're my mission tonight.
You.
It's you. And I try to do that. Do you guys have any questions you'd like to drop in the box? Because we're about done with the questions for tonight.
I've got a few.
Okay.
Picks up. So Tequila Dave. Oh no, we already covered that one, sorry. James Allen said, how loud are you aiming for with the master? I aim for 14 lufs but struggle to get my masters loud. Well, so to answer the question, a lot of like the culture now is kind of aiming for like -3 lufs, like a really loud mix, because it just seems to be like popular at the minute. But what I've learned realistically is actually like a -7, -8, sorry, -7, -6 is a nice, comfortable level that I think that the music industry should sort of aim towards.
Yeah. That's basically it, yeah. I mean, I think this whole loudness war is just a nightmare. There's so many tracks. Sometimes I get promos and I'm like, my God, that's absolutely distorted. Sounds like cack. But, you know, what are you going to do? Yeah.
Another question, James Allen again. He says, question, at what frequency would you mono the track for big sound systems? That's interesting, because... okay, I don't want to do my typical thing and go super deep, right? But if you have a club that's a really decent club, and you're facing the front and there's a right speaker, there's a left speaker, and there's no more, the club will sort of mono below about 140 hertz. It'll just mono it. And then the top will be stereo. Whereas if you get a club that's got like the 2 speakers, and then it's got another little room where it's got the speakers, and it's got one speaker in another little section, then they actually sum the entire track to mono. So it's better to be safe, to make sure that all your tracks are always mono compatible, so that it can translate everywhere. Because if there's multiple speaker outputs, then they're just going to sum the whole thing.
Wow, that's a good point.
Yeah, I didn't know that until recently, actually.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I think... any other questions there?
Yeah, one more. When they talk about drum panning, do you pan to the audience or pan to the drummer perspective? It doesn't matter.
I'm not really sure I understand that question. Like for me, drum panning, obviously I'm not going to pan my snares or my kicks. They're going to stay in the middle, right? But let's say hats, for example. So if you can imagine... you've got a bunch of hats, and then with your velocity you can change the hats so that they're different volumes, so they're not just da 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 in the middle. It's da, 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 you know, it gives you that nice like just change. And then you might pan your hats maybe slightly to the right, and then you might have a ride or something else come in, and you might pan that a little bit slightly to the, so it just creates width. So I'm just trying to make things a little wider when I'm panning. I'm not thinking about, is it going to the audience or is it going there? That's more about reverb placement, I think, for me. So panning is just making things wider and a little bit wider in the mix. So maybe I'll have like a backing vocal that will be more on the right here, and then another backing vocal that will balance out in a different way. You know, it could just be you double the track over with vocals, and you just have one panned hard right, one panned hard left. This is backing vocals we're talking about. And then you've got this nice wide vibe with these backing vocals and the main vocal sort of in the middle. Again, it's just a thing, whereas reverbs is more about placement, where you want it in the room. You know, where do I want this space to live, this reverb? Do I want it to sound like it's in okay area, or do I want it to sound like really close up, you know? So it again, to taste.
Awesome. They're all the ones I picked up.
All right, cool. So look, we have come to the end of our fourth one. If you've got any questions, then feel free to shoot them in here. We've got a couple of minutes left. Otherwise, we're going to finish. So I just want to say, Moisinn, first, thank you for showing up when you're not well.
Thank you.
And thank you for doing this with me as my guest this month. That was amazing. And we've learned so much from you. Big up, Moisinn. We've really learned a lot from you. I've learned a lot from you. And we will do another one, and we'd love to have you back.
Nice. At least I've got that.
We'll figure it out, and we'll come back. But in the meantime, I did put a link in for the poll. It would be great if you could fill that out. For people who signed up, I'd put the link here. I will send a trimmed down version of this when I get a chance. And we just want to say thank you so much for taking the time with us. Let's give some shout outs to everybody. Frosty Sounds, Dandy Cooper, Tony Blake, InDesign Soldier. Do you want to give some out?
Yeah, I've got Conclave. Just a shout out to him really, because he always like puts me straight on things and calls me out on my BS. So big ups to you. What
BS? Well. Justin Pierce, Jamie Thomas, James Allen, and to everybody who is joining us, we really thank you. Conclave, nice, St. Nicholas, thanks for the info. Got a massive thanks for all these. No wonder. You're welcome. You guys are welcome. We really enjoy doing this. I'm actually feel a bit. I'm going to America next week, so I'm going to feel a bit like. Oh, I was saying to Moisinn earlier, I'm going to miss doing these. So we definitely want to do them again. We would love to, and we've just got to find a way to do that so that we're both winning in this scenario. So support your artists. We need your support, and keep producing. And remember, it's not that difficult. It is obtainable. And remember, if it sounds like crap in the beginning and you're not happy with it, now you know why. You can understand all the work what we're doing. And basically, limiters, EQing, more EQing, side chaining. These are the things that bring things to life, you know what I mean? And constantly shaving off those frequencies you don't need and just balancing things in the mix. It's really, once you get around it, it's not that difficult. It can get really complicated, trust me. I've seen people take this to another level. But I really think what it boils down to, and I'll leave you with these pearls of wisdom, what it boils down to is just what sounds good, what feels right, and just understanding basic frequencies will get you there.
Totally agree.
Yeah? Got anything you want to add?
No, just thanks for everyone being here. It's been actually quite fun. There's been a lot of work behind the scenes, hasn't there? And just a huge shout out.
We should tell them some of the stuff that's gone wrong. Oh my god.
Yeah, a shout out to Rap, because obviously Rap's the one that is dealing with the hosting. She's dealing with all of the technical stuff behind the scenes. Yes, okay, I've been on the end of the microphone, but she's been doing all the button clicking, all the moderation, all the adverts, everything that Nee's been doing. So definitely a huge virtual round of applause there for Rap. Definitely.
Thank you. No, it's cool, but we've had figuring out this crackling on this mic. And it's not the mic. And so trust me, we have tried everything, and we've had super brainy people in here who are just scratching their heads to live and go, they can't understand it. So it's a compatibility issue between Mac, Chrome, Firefox. There's something going on because Moisinn's on a PC, piece of crap, and he's on a PC. Sorry. And Firefox, and it works wonderfully. But for me, Firefox works, but then we miss these plugins. So it's a head scratch. And actually, Dean Sense he was round here till like so late trying to help me figure this out. And he was just like, I do this for a living. I have no idea. We'll figure it out. And I was like, good luck. And I haven't heard from him since.
He's like in a corner, like.
Yeah, I'm just joking about PCs. They're good. Yeah, that's it really. So, okay, so we'll love you and leave you. And it's been really fun and we'll see you soon. And if you want to become a tribe member, this is different from Open the Daw. I do this huge community thing where I stream for my fans. It's mainly for people who love jungle, drum and bass and all the old school vibes. And let me give you that link in case you're in. Well, it's really simple. Just go to the website and click join the tribe. It's free for the first month and you guys can check it out. But there's a lot of content. People get free, they get merchandise, they get tracks, they get all kinds of stuff, a lot of things, and of course I stream and we do Zoom hangs and we hang out because really we just want to continue hanging out with our fans and not being so far away. It can be quite lonely DJing because you never get to know what people like when you've got a community. Like I speak to everyone in our tribe and they get all my attention all the time, and I'd say half of them have become really like personal friends now. It's like, it's quite crazy. Gigs this weekend. We've got, if you sign up, even if you don't sign up for the tribes, I sign up for my newsletter. I keep everybody informed. Every first of every month you get a newsletter telling you what gigs I'm playing, what's going on, all that stuff. And also stay safe, stay creative, and keep doing what you're doing, man.
Yeah, make sure you keep opening the door.
Open that door, walk right through it, smash it. All right, you guys, love and bass. Mwah. Us. See you later. Bye.